My own brother and sister called a family meeting. They said it was about our mother's future, but when I sat down at our old kitchen table, they handed me a piece of paper. It offered me a 10% share of my childhood home, the house I grew up in. What they didn't tell me was that they already owned it, and the meeting wasn't a discussion, it was a trap. If you're watching this, hit the like button and subscribe and let me know where you're watching from.
My name is Anya. I am 54 years old. For the last 20 years, my life has been quiet, predictable. It's a life I built carefully, like a wall around a garden. I live in a small, green-shuttered cottage at the edge of a town called Cedarbrook. I work as an archivist for the local historical society. My job is to preserve old things, letters, maps, farm ledgers. I find a strange comfort in giving order to other people's pasts. My days have a rhythm. I wake with the sun, I tend to my vegetable garden, I walk to work along the same path past the same willow tree. I come home, I make myself dinner for one. The silence in my house is a presence. Sometimes it feels like a friend. Sometimes it feels like a question I've stopped asking. It wasn't always this quiet. I grew up in a different world, a loud, chaotic, loving world. My childhood home was a bustling, slightly shabby farmhouse 30 miles from here. It was always full of people. My parents, Michael and Lena, my older brother, Leo, and my twin sister, Mara. The air was always thick with the smell of my mother's cooking, sourdough bread, simmering tomato sauce, the sharp tang of pickling spices. We didn't have much money. My father's mechanic shop did okay, but it was a constant dance of bills and repairs. My mother took in sewing. We grew most of our own food. But what we lacked in things, we made up for in noise, in laughter around a crowded table, in arguments that shook the windows but were always over by morning. The receipt I found, it was from a week before my high school graduation. I was 17. I'd gotten a full scholarship to a university 2 states away, a miracle, my ticket out. The tension in the house was a living thing. My father was proud but confused. "Why go so far to learn what you can learn here?" he'd ask. My mother's eyes held a silent worry. Leo teased me about becoming a fancy stranger, but Mara just grew quiet, a different kind of quiet than mine. Hers was full of hurt. I tried to talk to her about it late at night in our room. "It's only a few hours away," I'd whisper into the dark. "I'll come home all the time." She'd turn on her side, facing the wall. "It won't be the same. We'll call every day. You'll make new friends. You'll have new stories. I'll just be here." I didn't know how to answer that, because she was right. That was the whole point. So I wrote my list on the first piece of paper I grabbed from my mother's purse. A receipt for the ordinary groceries of the life I was about to leave. Get out, college, own life, be happy. I folded it tight, a secret pact with myself, and tucked it into the cookbook she used every day. A part of me wanted her to find it, to understand, but she never did. I drove to the farmhouse on Saturday morning under a sky the color of bone. The familiar route felt like driving into a photograph from my past. Everything was the same, yet smaller, quieter. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the sight hit me like a physical blow. The house looked tired. The white paint was peeling. The front porch sagged a little in the middle. My mother's rose bushes were overgrown, gone wild. And parked right by the front steps like it owned the place was a shiny silver pickup truck, brand new. It had a dealer decal from a luxury auto mall 2 towns over. Leo's truck. The kitchen smelled the same. Coffee, yeast, the faint scent of wood smoke from the old stove. But the feeling was all wrong. My mother sat at the head of the table, her hands wrapped around a mug. She looked smaller, fragile. She gave me a wan smile. "Anya, you're here." I bent to kiss her cheek. "Hi, Mama." Leo was at the counter pouring coffee. He'd gained weight. His face was ruddy. He was wearing new jeans, a flannel shirt that looked expensive.
"Hey, sis, long time." His hug was quick, perfunctory. Mara was already seated. She gave me a tight nod, no smile. "You made it." Ben, her husband, was there too, a silent, solid presence in the corner. He gave me a sympathetic look. My nieces, now teenagers, were nowhere to be seen, probably told to stay away from the adult business. We sat. The silence was thick. My mother's eyes were on her coffee. Leo started. No small talk. "Okay, here's the situation. The shop is in trouble, real trouble. I've kept it afloat as long as I could for Dad, but it's bleeding money. The taxes on this place are killing us. Mom's savings are getting thin. Something's got to give." "Us?" I asked quietly. "Who is us, Leo?" He waved a hand. "The family. Mom, me. This property is in Hassett, a huge one. We've got an offer from Crestwood Development. They want to build a cluster of high-end homes. They're offering $650,000. The number hung in the air. It was more money than any of us had ever seen. Mara spoke, her voice flat. "It's a good offer. With that money, we could get Mom a lovely, manageable condo in town, fully paid for. No stairs, no yard work. There'd be plenty left over to settle the shop's debts and provide for everyone." "Provide?" I looked from Mara to Leo. "What does that mean?" Leo leaned forward. "It means, Anya, that I've been the one here. I've been the one fixing the roof when it leaked. I've been the one dealing with the plumber, the tax assessor, driving Mom to her appointments. Mara's been here every day, cooking, cleaning, taking care of her. You've been where? In your little house, doing your little job?" The words were a slap, delivered calmly, but a slap nonetheless. "I've sent money," I said, my face growing hot. "I call, I visit." "You visit," Mara said, her eyes finally meeting mine. They were hard. 4 times a year, like a tourist. You send a check. That's not the same as being here. It's not the same as showing up when the heat breaks in February or when Mom is too tired to make herself dinner. I felt it then, the full weight of the debt. They had kept a ledger I never saw. Every missed Sunday, every holiday cut short, every time I chose my peaceful solitude over the messy, demanding reality of family, it was all written down, and now it was being presented to me. "So," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "the plan is to sell Mom's home, the home we grew up in, without even asking her what she wants?" My mother looked up, her eyes watery. "It's too much, Anya. For Leo, for Mara. I'm a burden." "You are not a burden," I said, reaching for her hand. It felt thin and cool in mine. "It's practical," Leo insisted. "It's the only smart move. We've already met with the developer. They're ready to move fast. We just need to agree, all of us. The property's in Mom's name, but she'll listen to us, to what's best for the family." "And what's the split?" I asked, the archivist in me needing the facts, "of the money." Leo and Mara exchanged a glance, a quick, almost invisible flicker. That's when I knew the plan was already made. "Well," Leo said, clearing his throat, "considering the unequal contribution, we thought a fair division would account for that. Mara and I have carried the weight, so we'd take a larger share for our families, for our futures. You've built your future already. You have your house, your career, no kids. You don't need as much." The room swum for a second. "How much larger?" "We were thinking 60, 30, 10, Mara said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Leo gets 60, Mara gets 30, you get 10. 10%, $65,000 from my childhood home, from my share of our family's history, while Leo walked away with nearly $400,000 for a business he'd failed and a truck he couldn't afford." I looked at my mother. Her head was bowed. She wasn't going to fight. She believed she was a burden. She believed this was the price of her care. I looked at my twin sister, my mirror. I saw no reflection of myself in her eyes anymore, only a cold, resentful calculation. "You've already decided," I said, not a question. "It's what makes sense," Leo said, a finality in his tone. I stood up. The legs of my chair scraped loudly on the old linoleum. All eyes were on me. "I need to think. I can't agree to this, not right now." Leo's face darkened. "What's to think about? This is for the family, Anya. This is about taking care of Mom, or is your own life too important to help with that?" That was the trigger, the slight. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was the public declaration in the heart of our family home that my life, my choices, my independence made me less a part of this family, that my love was worth only 10%. I looked at each of them, my mother shrunken and sad, my brother bloated with entitlement, my sister a stranger made of ice. "I'll let you know," I said softly, and I walked out of the kitchen through the familiar hallway and out the front door. I didn't look back. As I drove away, the silver truck gleaming in the dull light, I understood one thing with absolute clarity. The family I thought I still belonged to was already gone.
The silence after I left the farmhouse was different. It wasn't my peaceful cottage quiet. It was a heavy, waiting silence. It felt like the air before a storm. I went through the motions of my week. I went to work. I sorted through 19th century shipping manifests. I watered my plants. But my mind was back in that kitchen, at that table, hearing those numbers, 60, 30, 10. The first pressure came through my phone. It started that Sunday evening, a call from Leo. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave one. Then a text. "We need an answer. The developer is getting impatient." I didn't reply. I made myself dinner, a simple soup, but I couldn't taste it. I just stared at the steam rising from the bowl. The pressure wasn't just emotional. It became financial. That Wednesday, I got a certified letter. It was from a lawyer's office I didn't recognize. My hands were cold as I opened it. It was a formal, polite letter. It outlined the offer from Crestwood Development. It detailed the proposed 60-30-10 distribution. It stated that my siblings had indicated my likely agreement and were proceeding with the initial steps of the appraisal process. It requested my signature on several attached documents to expedite the family matter. At the bottom, a note was handwritten. "Anya, let's get this wrapped up. No need to make it harder than it has to be." Then Leo. He had hired a lawyer. He was spending money we didn't have to pressure me into giving up money I didn't want. The irony was bitter. I put the letter on my table. It looked so out of place among my simple things, a declaration of war on my quiet life. That night, the second incident happened. I was in my garden trying to find peace by pulling up the dead annuals. My phone rang. It was my mother. My heart leapt. Maybe she was calling to tell me it was all a mistake, to say she wanted to keep the house, to ask me to help her find another way. "Mama?" Her voice was thin, shaky. "Anya, honey, I had a fall." I was on my feet instantly. "What? Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm at home. I'm all right. Just bruised my hip. It's okay. Mara's here now." "How did you fall?" "The porch step. It's been loose for months. Leo said he'd fix it." She started to cry. Soft, helpless sounds. "It's too much, this house. It's too old. I'm too old. I'm scared, Anya. What if I'm alone next time?" The manipulation was so clear. Or was it? Was it manipulation? Or was it just my terrified elderly mother? The line was impossible to see. And because I couldn't see it, the guilt multiplied. She was alone. She was scared. And I was 30 miles away worrying about my own peace. "Mara and Leo are right," she sobbed. "I need to be somewhere safe. Please, Anya, please don't fight them on this. Let's just do it. Let's just sell it. I can't live like this anymore." How do you fight against that? How do you say no to your crying mother who says she's afraid in her own home? My resolution, which had felt like a small hard stone inside me, began to crumble into sand. I'll think about it, Mama. I promise. Just say yes, baby, for me." I got off the phone and sank onto my garden bench. The twilight was deepening. The first star was out. I felt utterly, completely alone. The family I had built my life away from was now a coordinated unit, pressing in on me from all sides. Leo with his legal pressure, Mara with her emotional accounting, my mother with her fear. I was cornered. I drove to the farmhouse again, unannounced, the following Saturday. I needed to see it, not during a family confrontation, but alone. I needed to see if it was really the crumbling prison they made it out to be. I let myself in with the key I still had. The silence inside was profound. It smelled of closed-up air and old wood. I walked through the rooms. Yes, the wallpaper in the hallway was peeling at the seams. The faucet in the bathroom dripped. The porch step was loose. But it wasn't a ruin. It was a house that needed attention, love, care. I went downstairs to the kitchen. I opened my mother's cookbook, the big stained one. And there, slipped between the pages for sourdough and apple pie, was the receipt. My receipt. 30 years later. She'd never thrown it away. Had she found it? Had she read my desperate teenage scribble? Or had it just lived there, a forgotten bookmark in the recipe of our daily life? I took it out. The paper was even more fragile now. I could barely make out the grocery items now, but my writing was still there. Get out, college, own life, be happy. Tears welled up, hot and sudden. Had I been happy in my quiet cottage with my ordered life? Yes, but it was a happiness that existed in a vacuum. It was a happiness that required me to leave this, to close the door on this noise, this mess, this love. And now, this house, this last tangible piece of that old world, was to be sold off. My 10% would be a payoff, a final severance package for my childhood. I heard a car on the gravel. I quickly slipped the receipt into my pocket. Through the window, I saw Mara's minivan. She was alone. She got out, carrying a bag of groceries. She hadn't seen my car parked around the side. I had a choice. I could go out, face her, or I could wait, hidden, and leave. I stood frozen in the kitchen as her key turned in the lock. She came in, shuffling the grocery bag onto the counter. She didn't see me at first. She just sighed, a sound of deep weariness, and put a hand to the small of her back. She looked tired. She looked older than me, though we were born only minutes apart. This was the cost of being there. It was etched on her face. Then she turned and saw me. She jumped, her hand flying to her chest. "Anya, what are you doing here? You scared me." "I just came to see the house." Her eyes narrowed. She looked around as if checking what I might have touched or taken. "Does Mom know you're here?" "No, I have a key." "You shouldn't just let yourself in. It's still my home too, Mara." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Is it? When was the last time you spent the night? When was the last time you stocked the fridge, or changed the sheets, or sat with Mom through a whole evening of her worrying?" I had no answer. "So I didn't think so." She started unpacking the groceries. Yogurt, soft bread, pre-made meals for one. Easy things for my mother to manage. "So, have you thought about it? The offer?" "I'm thinking." "Well, think faster. Leo is meeting with the bank again on Monday. If he doesn't have a concrete plan, they're calling the loan. He'll lose the shop, Dad's shop." She said it like a dagger aimed at my heart. "There has to be another way," I said, my voice weak. "We could get a home equity loan to fix the place up. We could rent the land to a farmer. We could—" "We?" She slammed a yogurt container on the counter. "There is no we, Anya. There's me and Leo and Mom. We are here dealing with the reality. You are there, coming up with ideas that involve more work for us. A loan? Who services that? Renting land? Who manages the tenant? You from your cottage 30 miles away?" She was right. Every alternative I proposed would ultimately fall on their shoulders. My solutions were just more of my remote management, more checks to write, more calls to make, while they lived with the day-to-day. "The 10%, I said, changing tact. "It feels like a punishment." She stopped, her back to me, her shoulders slumped. "It's not a punishment, it's a reflection. For 30 years, you built your life away from here. You succeeded. We're happy for you, really. But this
She gestured around the kitchen. This was our life, our choice, our burden. And now it's our asset. You don't get to swoop in at the end and claim an equal share of something you chose to leave behind. There it was, the core of it. Not greed, resentment, a deep 30-year-old river of it. My freedom had come at their cost. My own life had been built on the foundation of their constant presence. And now, this house, this last tangible piece of that old world, was to be sold off. My 10% would be a payoff, a final severance package for my childhood. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The tired lines around her eyes, the practical worn sweater, the hands that were always busy. I saw the weight she carried, and for a fleeting second, I saw the ghost of the girl who used to whisper with me in the dark. I missed her so terribly in that moment, it took my breath away. "I'm sorry, Mara," I whispered. It was all I could say. She turned, and for a second her mask slipped. I saw not anger, but a profound, exhausted sadness. "So am I," she said quietly. Then the mask was back. "Just sign the papers, Anya. Let's end this." I left without another word. As I drove home, the receipt in my pocket felt like it was burning a hole through my jeans. The third and most devastating pressure point had been revealed. It wasn't just about money or houses. It was about the unpayable debt for a life lived on my own terms. I drove to the farmhouse again, unannounced, the following Saturday. I needed to see it, not during a family confrontation, but alone. I needed to see if it was really the crumbling prison they made it out to be. I let myself in with the key I still had. The silence inside was profound. It smelled of closed-up air and old wood. I walked through the rooms. Yes, the wallpaper in the hallway was peeling at the seams. The faucet in the bathroom dripped. The porch step was loose. But it wasn't a ruin. It was a house that needed attention, love, care. I went downstairs to the kitchen. I opened my mother's cookbook, the big stained one. And there, slipped between the pages for sourdough and apple pie, was the receipt. My receipt. 30 years later. She'd never thrown it away. Had she found it? Had she read my desperate teenage scribble? Or had it just lived there, a forgotten bookmark in the recipe of our daily life? I took it out. The paper was even more fragile now. I could barely make out the grocery items now, but my writing was still there. Get out, college, own life, be happy. Tears welled up, hot and sudden. Had I been happy in my quiet cottage with my ordered life? Yes, but it was a happiness that existed in a vacuum. It was a happiness that required me to leave this, to close the door on this noise, this mess, this love. And now, this house, this last tangible piece of that old world, was to be sold off. My 10% would be a payoff, a final severance package for my childhood. I heard a car on the gravel. I quickly slipped the receipt into my pocket. Through the window, I saw Mara's minivan. She was alone. She got out, carrying a bag of groceries. She hadn't seen my car parked around the side. I had a choice. I could go out, face her, or I could wait, hidden, and leave. I stood frozen in the kitchen as her key turned in the lock. She came in, shuffling the grocery bag onto the counter. She didn't see me at first. She just sighed, a sound of deep weariness, and put a hand to the small of her back. She looked tired. She looked older than me, though we were born only minutes apart. This was the cost of being there. It was etched on her face. Then she turned and saw me. She jumped, her hand flying to her chest. "Anya, what are you doing here? You scared me." "I just came to see the house." Her eyes narrowed. She looked around as if checking what I might have touched or taken. "Does Mom know you're here?" "No, I have a key." You shouldn't just let yourself in. It's still my home too, Mara." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Is it? When was the last time you spent the night? When was the last time you stocked the fridge, or changed the sheets, or sat with Mom through a whole evening of her worrying?" I had no answer. "So I didn't think so." She started unpacking the groceries. Yogurt, soft bread, pre-made meals for one. Easy things for my mother to manage. "So, have you thought about it? The offer?" "I'm thinking." "Well, think faster. Leo is meeting with the bank again on Monday. If he doesn't have a concrete plan, they're calling the loan. He'll lose the shop. Dad's shop." She said it like a dagger aimed at my heart. "There has to be another way," I said, my voice weak. "We could get a home equity loan to fix the place up. We could rent the land to a farmer. We could—" "We?" She slammed a yogurt container on the counter. "There is no we, Anya. There's me and Leo and Mom. We are here dealing with the reality. You are there, coming up with ideas that involve more work for us. A loan? Who services that? Renting land? Who manages the tenant? You from your cottage 30 miles away?" She was right. Every alternative I proposed would ultimately fall on their shoulders. My solutions were just more of my remote management, more checks to write, more calls to make, while they lived with the day-to-day. "The 10%, I said, changing tact. "It feels like a punishment." She stopped, her back to me, her shoulders slumped. "It's not a punishment, it's a reflection. For 30 years, you built your life away from here. You succeeded. We're happy for you, really. But this," she gestured around the kitchen, "this was our life, our choice, our burden. And now it's our asset. You don't get to swoop in at the end and claim an equal share of something you chose to leave behind." There it was, the core of it. Not greed, resentment, a deep 30-year-old river of it. My freedom had come at their cost. My own life had been built on the foundation of their constant presence. And now, this house, this last tangible piece of that old world, was to be sold off. My 10% would be a payoff, a final severance package for my childhood. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The tired lines around her eyes, the practical worn sweater, the hands that were always busy. I saw the weight she carried, and for a fleeting second, I saw the ghost of the girl who used to whisper with me in the dark. I missed her so terribly in that moment, it took my breath away. "I'm sorry, Mara," I whispered. It was all I could say. She turned, and for a second her mask slipped. I saw not anger, but a profound, exhausted sadness. "So am I," she said quietly. Then the mask was back. "Just sign the papers, Anya. Let's end this." I left without another word. As I drove home, the receipt in my pocket felt like it was burning a hole through my jeans. The third and most devastating pressure point had been revealed. It wasn't just about money or houses. It was about the unpayable debt for a life lived on my own terms. The following Saturday, the third incident cornered me completely. I drove to Cedarbrook's little library, a place I often went for solace. I was looking for nothing in particular, just the comfort of old books and quiet. As I browsed the local history section, I heard familiar voices from the other side of the stacks. Mara and 2 other women from town. They were in the sitting area having coffee. They hadn't seen me. "Just so hard," Mara was saying, her voice carrying the practiced tone of someone sharing a burden. "With Mom and everything, we found a perfect solution, a lovely place for her. But, well, you know how it is with family. Not everyone is on board." "Oh, I heard," said one of the women, her voice dripping with sympathy. "Your sister, right? The one who moved away?" A pause. I froze, a book in my hand. "Yes," Mara said, and her sigh was a masterpiece of long suffering. "She's always been a bit detached, idealistic. She doesn't see the practical realities, thinks we can just keep the old place as a museum. Meanwhile, Leo's about to lose his shirt and I'm running myself ragged. But what can you do? You try to do what's best for everyone, and sometimes, she let the sentence hang, the unspoken conclusion was clear, and sometimes a selfish sibling makes it impossible. The other women made comforting noises. Some people just don't have the family instinct, one said. It's so sad for your mother, said the other. It is, Mara agreed, her voice thick with faux resignation. But we'll manage. We always do. We're used to carrying the weight. I stood there behind the stacks, invisible. My face burned with shame and fury. This was the social cost. She was rewriting our history in real time for the town. I was no longer the sister who left to build her own life. I was the detached, idealistic, selfish obstacle. My character was being assassinated in the soft light of the public library over decaf and sympathy. It was the final corner. Emotionally, I was battered by Ben's plea. Financially, I was outmatched and exhausted. Socially, my reputation in the only community that had ever known me was being dismantled. I had no allies, no ground to stand on. The walls of my quiet, ordered life were closing in, and they were made of the faces of my family. I went into my home office, a small nook with a desk. I pulled out the lawyer's letter. I found a pen. My hand hovered over the signature line. The pen felt like it weighed 100 pounds. This was it, the end of the line, the final admission that my own life was a separate story, and the family story could go on without me, funded by the sale of our shared past. But something stopped me, a stubborn, quiet ember that wouldn't go out. It was the feeling of that receipt in my pocket. It was the look on Mara's face in the kitchen when her mask had slipped. Not just anger, but a deep shared sadness. It was the knowledge that Leo's truck was a lie he bought himself. This wasn't a clean, necessary surgery. It was a messy, desperate amputation, and signing felt less like gracious consent and more like aiding and abetting a crime against our own history. I put the pen down. I opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for. A miracle, a loophole, something. I logged into the county's public property records portal, a tool I sometimes used for work. My hands were trembling as I typed in the farmhouse address. The record loaded. Owner, Lena Marie Rossi. Tax status, current. Purchase date, 1971. It was all as I expected. I was about to close the window when my eye caught a link at the bottom. Related documents. I clicked it. There was the deed, the tax liens, none, and then a document filed just 6 months ago. The title made my breath catch. Warranty Deed Joint Tenancy with Right of Survivorship. I opened the PDF. The world narrowed to the glowing screen. The document stated that Lena Marie Rossi was transferring the property at our address to two parties, Leonardo Michael Rossi and Mara Lena Conti. It was signed by my mother, notarized. The effective date was the day after my father's funeral. My vision swam. I read it again and again. Leo and Mara, joint tenants with right of survivorship, meaning if one died, the other automatically got the whole property. My mother had transferred the house to them 6 months after Dad died. She had never said a word. Leo and Mara had never said a word. At the kitchen table, talking about 60-30-10, they had let me believe the house was still hers to sell, that we were all deciding together, but they already owned it. The pressure in my chest exploded, not into panic, but into a cold, clear, crystalline understanding. The betrayal wasn't the unequal split. The betrayal was the lie. The whole conversation had been a performance. They didn't need my agreement to sell. They could have sold it any time. They needed my agreement to make it clean, to avoid a messy public family fight that might look bad, to get me to sign away any potential moral or legal claim I might muster as an heir, to get my compliance so they could tell themselves and everyone else that it was a family decision. The 10% wasn't my share of the sale. It was hush money.
For a long time, I just sat there. The silence in my cottage was different again. The waiting, storm before pressure was gone. The gray fog of despair had lifted. In its place was a cold, clean emptiness, like the air after a heavy snow, quiet, sharp. My mind, which had been a chaotic jumble of guilt and fear, went utterly still. They owned the house. They had owned it for years. Every conversation, every tear, every plea, every text, it had all been theater. A campaign to secure my willing surrender, to make the theft of my past look like a family compromise. I felt no anger, not yet. Anger is hot, and this was cold. What I felt was a profound, settling clarity. The game was not what I thought it was. I had been playing checkers while they were playing chess, but I had just seen the board. The first thing I did was nothing. I did not call, I did not text, I did not rage. I printed the deed document. The hum of the printer was the only sound in the house. I placed the single sheet of paper in the center of my clean desk. I looked at it. Evidence. My archivist's mind, my professional skill kicked in. This was a primary source, a document that told a true story beneath the false one. My job was to preserve truth, to order chaos, to protect history from being erased or rewritten. I started a new folder on my computer, not an emotional journal, a case file. I labeled it Rossi Property. Inside, I created subfolders: documents, timeline, communications, financial. I began with the timeline. I started from my father's death. I noted the date of the deed transfer 2 weeks after the funeral, while I was still raw with grief, while my mother was barely functional. That was strategic. It was when she was most vulnerable, most likely to sign something put in front of her to help Leo with the business or to make things easier for Mara. I added the dates of all the conversations about the sale, the lawyer's letter, Ben's visit, the library incident. I mapped their campaign of pressure against the bedrock fact they never needed my permission, they only needed my silence. Next, I gathered documents. I scanned the lawyer's letter proposing the 60-30-10 split. I took a photo of the handwritten note from Leo. I screenshotted the text from Mara and Leo. I downloaded the county record of the deed. Each piece was a puzzle piece snapping into place, revealing a picture of deliberate deception. The second part of my plan was personal. I needed to see my mother, alone, not in the farmhouse, which was now a stage set for their drama, on neutral ground. I called the community center in Cedar Brook. They had a quiet sitting area. I called my mother when I knew Mara would be at work. "Mama, it's Anya. I'd like to take you out to tea, just us, at the community center. Would that be all right?" Her voice was wary. "Tea? Why there?" "It's quiet, and I'd like to talk to you. Not about the house, just to talk." A long pause. "All right, tomorrow, 2:00. The following day, I arrived early. I chose a table by a sunny window overlooking the garden. I brought a small photo album, not of the family, but of my work, of preserved documents, beautiful old Macs, things that were part of my world. When my mother arrived, walking slowly with her teen, I stood and helped her to the seat. I didn't hug her. The betrayal was too fresh, and she was, whether willingly or not, part of it. We made small talk. I showed her the photos. "This is a ship's log from 1845, I said. "See the handwriting? The captain recorded seeing a whale." She peered at it, a faint smile on her lips. "Your father had terrible handwriting," she murmured. It was an opening, a tiny crack. "Mama," I said, my voice soft. I put the album aside. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth as my mother, not as someone caught in the middle. Did you know that Leo and Mara own the farmhouse now?" The color drained from her face. Her hands, resting on the table, began to tremble. She looked down at her teacup, then out the window. A full minute passed. The silence was heavy, but I waited. I would not fill it for her. They said it was for the best," she whispered finally. "After your father, Leo said the business was part of the estate, that putting it in their names would protect it from taxes, from if I got sick and needed a nursing home. They said they would always take care of me, that it was just a piece of paper. Did you have your own lawyer look at that piece of paper, Mama?" She shook her head, a tiny, ashamed movement. "They brought a nice man to the house. He notarized it. He said it was standard." "And did they tell you what it meant?
That it meant I had no claim to the house I grew up in? Her eyes filled with tears. They said you wouldn't want it, that you had your own life, that you wouldn't come back for it, that this way it stayed in the practical part of the family. She used her fingers to make weak quotes around practical. She knew how that word would land. The ache in my chest was profound. They hadn't just lied to me, they had lied to her. They had used her grief and her trust to isolate her and to isolate me. Do you want to leave the farmhouse, truly? Or are you just scared and tired? She cried then, silent tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. I'm tired, Anya. I'm so tired. The house is big. It's lonely. But it's all I have left of him, of all of you when you were little. The idea of strangers living there, it breaks my heart. What if you didn't have to be scared, I asked, leaning forward. What if the house could be fixed? What if you could stay, but with help, real help, not just Mara running herself into the ground? How? She asked, a flicker of hope in her wet eyes. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out, and I need you to promise me something. Don't sign anything else, not a single paper, not until you talk to me first, and not until you have someone, a lawyer who works just for you, explain it. Can you promise me that? She looked at me, my mother, seeing me perhaps for the first time in decades, not as the daughter who left, but as an adult capable of helping. She nodded, a little strength returning to her posture. I promise.
They came on Saturday morning, not just Mara, not just Leo, both of them together, a united front. I saw Leo's silver truck crunch into my gravel driveway, Mara's minivan right behind it. They parked, not neatly but haphazardly, blocking my car in, a show of force. I opened the door before they could knock. I stood in the doorway, not inviting them in. Leo, Mara. Leo's face was flushed. He looked past me into my cottage. Are you going to let us in, or do we have to do this on the porch? The porch is fine, I said, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. I would not let their chaos into my sanctuary. We stood there, the three of us, on my small front porch. The autumn air was crisp. It felt like a stage. This has gone far enough, Anya, Leo began, his voice booming, trying to fill the space. Hiring some city lawyer, sending threatening letters after everything we've done for Mom, for the family? The letter isn't threatening, I said. It asks questions, questions that should have been answered a long time ago. Why did Mom sign over the house? To protect it, Leo snapped, from Medicaid, from things you wouldn't understand. You weren't here dealing with the reality. And the 10%? I asked, turning my gaze to Mara. If the house is already yours, what was the 10% for? Mara's eyes were hard, but I saw a flicker of panic in them. The script was falling apart. It was a gesture, she said, her voice tight, to include you, to acknowledge that you're still family. A gesture, I repeated. $65,000 is quite a gesture for a house I don't own. It sounds more like a payment for my signature, for my silence. Leo took a step forward. You have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea the pressure I'm under. The shop is failing. I have debts. This sale is my only way out. Our only way out. So it is about the money? I said softly. Not about Mom's safety, not about her being a burden. It's about your debts, your truck, your mistakes. His composure shattered. Don't you dare judge me, you who left, you who built your perfect little solitary life while we stayed and dealt with the mess. You don't get to judge how we survive. I'm not judging how you survive, Leo. I'm questioning why you lied to do it, why you lied to Mom, why you lied to me. We didn't lie, cried Mara, her voice breaking. We protected the family from people like you who drift in and out when it's convenient. You left, Anya. You made your choice. This is the consequence. There it was, the raw, unfiltered truth. My leaving was the original sin. Everything that came after was my penance. In their eyes, the house was their reward for staying, and my share was a charity they could choose to bestow or withhold.
I looked at them, my brother and my sister. I saw the fear beneath the anger, the terror of losing their lifeline, the shame of being caught. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt a deep, weary sadness. "I'm not trying to take the house from you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but carrying clearly in the quiet morning. "You already have it. It's yours. You can sell it. You can burn it down. It's your property." They both stared at me, confused. This wasn't the script. I was supposed to fight, to cry, to beg. "But," I continued, "you will respond to Eleanor Vance's letter. You will provide a full accounting to me and to Mom of the true financial situation of the shop and the proposed sale. You will arrange for Mom to have independent legal advice regarding her status, whether she has a life estate or if she's simply a tenant you can evict. And you will reimburse me for the financial support I provided over the last 5 years, because I gave it to support our mother in her home, not to subsidize your ownership of it." Mara scoffed. "Or what, you'll sue? With what money?" "No," I said, "or I will take the file I have compiled, the deed, the lawyer's letter offering me hush money, the timeline, the records of my contributions, and I will share it with the Town Historical Society, of which I am a respected member, with the local paper, with everyone in Cedar Brook who thinks I'm the detached, idealistic sister who wouldn't help. I will tell the true story, not as an accusation, just as a matter of historical record, how the Rossi family farm was transferred under shadowy circumstances, how the remaining children orchestrated its sale, how the sister who left was offered a fraction to go quietly." I paused, letting the image form in their minds. "You can have the money, Leo. You can have your fresh start, but you will not have the narrative. You will not have the town's sympathy. You will have the truth." The color drained from both their faces. They understood. In a small town, reputation is a currency as real as cash. Leo's business relied on local trust. Mara's social standing, her sense of being the good, responsible daughter, was her identity. The threat wasn't a lawsuit. It was exposure. It was making their private maneuverings public knowledge. It was making the whispered conversations in the library a matter of documented fact. "You wouldn't," Mara breathed, her face ashen. "I am an archivist, Mara," I said, with my voice finally carrying a hint of the steel I felt inside. "My job is to preserve the real story, to not let the convenient version erase what actually happened. I will do my job." Leo looked from me to Mara, his bluster completely gone. He looked like a scared boy. What do you want, Anya? Really?" "I told you, transparency for Mom, accountability for the money I sent, and one thing from the house." "What thing?" Mara asked, her voice hollow. "The cookbook, Mom's cookbook, and everything in it." They were silent, utterly deflated. The confrontation was over. There were no more arguments to make. The power balance had not just shifted, it had inverted. Their strength was in secrecy and guilt. I had taken away the secrecy, and I had let go of the guilt. We'll talk to the lawyer," Leo muttered, not meeting my eyes. "And Mom gets her own lawyer," I insisted. He nodded, a short, jerky movement. Then he turned and trudged back to his truck. Mara stood for a moment longer, looking at me. I saw not just anger now, but a dawning, horrified realization of who I had become. Not the pushover they expected, but someone with a will as strong as theirs, forged in a different fire. She turned without a word and left. And I got the cookbook. Mara brought it to me herself one cold afternoon. She didn't come to the cottage. She met me at the Historical Society. She handed me the big stained binder without a word, her face a mask of complicated emotions, resentment, shame, exhaustion. "Thank you," I said simply. She just nodded, turned, and left. That evening at home, I opened it. The spine cracked familiarly. I flipped through the pages, past the sourdough starter instructions, the tomato sauce recipe stained with a drop of red wine, the pie crust directions in my grandmother's shaky hand. and there, in the back, tucked into a pocket I'd forgotten about, was a small bundle of papers. Not just the receipt, there were others. A drawing I'd made in first grade of our house with a too big sun in the corner, a spelling test Mara got a gold star on, a pressed violet, now brown and fragile. My mother had been the archivist all along, preserving the fragile history of our ordinary days. I framed the receipt, not to display, but to keep. I put it in a drawer with the bundle of capers, a curated collection of my own. One evening, months after everything was settled, my mother came to my cottage for dinner. It was the first time she'd visited. She walked slowly through my rooms, looking at my books, my framed maps, my single comfortable chair. She stopped in the kitchen where I was using her ceramic bowl to make a salad. "It's nice here," she said, her voice soft. "It's very you." "Thank you, Mama." We ate at our small table. The cookbook was on a shelf nearby. As we finished, she looked at it, then at me. "I found that receipt, years ago. I left it there. I thought if you ever came back for the book, you'd find it and you'd know that I knew." Tears pricked my eyes. "Knew what?" "That you had to go, that you were different. It broke my heart, but I knew." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was papery and warm. "I'm sorry I wasn't stronger then. I'm sorry I let them use my fear." "It's okay, Mama." "No," she said, shaking her head with a firmness I hadn't seen in years. "It's not, but we're here now." She squeezed my hand. "You fought for me. At the end, you were the one who fought for me, and for yourself. Your father would have been so proud of your strength." In that moment, the last of the old guilt, the 30-year-old debt, dissolved. It just vanished. I had spent a lifetime feeling like I owed them for leaving, but I didn't. I owed it to myself to live my life, and I owed it to them to be true to myself. That was the only debt that mattered, and it was one I had finally paid in full. The lesson wasn't about greed or betrayal. It was about the cost of authenticity. Sometimes living your truth has a price. It might be distance. It might be misunderstanding. It might be the heartbreak of realizing that the people you love see your happiness as a rejection of them. But paying that price is better than the slow death of living a lie to keep the peace. You can love your family and still choose yourself. In fact, that might be the only way to love them honestly in the end. I thought leaving was the hard part, but I learned that coming back to yourself